A terrifying threat is about to be unleashed. Androids spread the terror and a 7-year timeskip takes us to Gohan's high school life. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot still has much more to offer. Welcome to the second part of the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot review. I'm really happy that this game has been so greatly received. We will continue as we promised. Can we reach a goal of 100 likes? I know that nothing's impossible for you guys, so let's get started. In the interlude before the arrival of the androids, the game has a couple of elements worth highlighting. The first being the recreation of the mythical driver's license episode in which Goku and Piccolo compete to see who wins the race, letting you drive directly as if you were in the show, a very entertaining brief nod. And the second would be the cameo of Android 21, a character from Dragon Ball FighterZ, here playing the role of a researcher that allows you to train and get new skills that would not be possible to get in normal training areas. This is how the Frieza saga would conclude. Goku manages to barely escape from Namek before it exploded, and he returns to Earth months later. In each interlude of the game's chapters, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot takes the subject of transition seriously. By assigning us to the most relevant character at that point in the story, we can move around the open world and perform different activities, whether it's to level up, improve your attributes, or learn new techniques. It's great to give that fresh air to the player, reminding them that of so many things that can be done before embarking on their next adventure. Letting him play even with the concepts that make Dragon Ball fun, like the dramatic irony. After several days of peace in the life of the Z Warriors, it turns out that now, out of nowhere, Frieza is alive and comes to Earth accompanied by his own father. But to save the day, a mysterious young man appears and eradicates both villains as if they were nothing. To everyone's surprise, this man is a Super Saiyan 2. Later on, and after having received Goku back on Earth, this young man reveals to them that he comes from the future and is the son of Vegeta and Bulma. He also warns them that in the coming years, the Earth will be consumed by destruction at the hands of monstrous androids capable of ending all the Z Warriors. He tells them that he is the only survivor of the future and Goku would die from a heart disease. Luckily, Trunks comes with the antidote to prevent that from happening and warn everyone about the legacy of the androids. In this way, everyone prepares for the fatal day. Years later, the androids finally make an appearance. Everyone is ready to face them, but to everyone's surprise, Goku must face his lethal disease in the middle of the fight against an android that can absorb any energy discharge. Luckily, and with a moment expected by all of us, the Saiyan Prince transforms into Super Saiyan. Vegeta saves Goku from his fight with number 19 and finally ends up with the android. In the middle of the chase to reach Dr. Hero, aka number 20, thanks to the lack of exact calculations for the power level of the Z Warriors, he awakens the true horrors of the future, number 17 and 18, plus a third android, number 16. The duo easily finishes all the Earthlings, Piccolo and even Vegeta. Despite their training, effort and planning, it was not enough to avoid falling at the hands of the androids. Still, Trunks, when he returned that day, realized that they were fighting against the wrong opponents and could not understand why. Meanwhile, the antidote for Goku's heart was the only thing that separated him from this world and the other. It turns out that now a being called Cell is a specialized android that was created from the cells of the best warriors and also built with the objective of perfecting himself by absorbing numbers 17 and 18, thus becoming the ultimate android. Piccolo is the first one to meet him. Now fused with Kami, he is probably the most powerful character in the series at the time, but with a little luck and suspicion, Cell manages to escape. In this way, the androids find Piccolo when they go in search of Goku. 17 and Piccolo face each other in an unprecedented fight, one of which, if you ask me, is one of the best ones the anime has offered, showing the ferocity of Piccolo's attacks against the skill of Android 17. Here I would like to highlight that the fights against the androids are probably the most complicated in history. They are rivals who use attacks to drain our life while using it to increase their own. Cell, number 19 and 20 all do the same thing. However, when you learn the pattern in which they attack, sooner or later you finish them off. Unfortunately for everyone, Cell has become infinitely more powerful by absorbing thousands of living beings on Earth, and now Hell, not even Piccolo is a rival for him. He gets him out of the way and is willing to absorb 17 first. But someone is there to stop him. Number 16, the android who until this moment had shown no intentions to fight, now showed enormous power, even matching Cell's power level. While all this was happening, Vegeta and Trunks entered an intensive training method that would only take one day on Earth but would be a whole year for the father and son, thanks to the effect of the time chamber. Both come out with impressive fighting powers and head to Cell's location to eradicate him. Just when Cell managed to get his semi-perfect form by absorbing 17 and was kicking 16 ass, Tien tries to retain him the best way he can by launching his ultimate attack consecutively. At that moment, the two Saiyans arrive. A quick mention here to what was the confrontation of 16 with Cell. This was only cinematic. In the game we can only use Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, Vegeta, Trunks, Gotenks and Vegito as playable characters, so let's say that it was a development decision to preserve the margin of gameplay of the moment, so we could not use the androids. The problem is when they make us play with Goku when he didn't even participate in this fight. If they give the luxury of omitting some gameplay sections, skipping some fights, but then they use that time gained to put another fight that didn't even exist. I didn't understand that. If you're tired of games being too expensive, at Instant Gaming you can buy all the games you want at an incredible price. You even have the option to get pre-orders and gift cards with a big discount. I've been using it for several years now, and here are my latest purchases to show you guys that is completely legit. Cheap, fast and safe. You can check it out in the link I leave you in the description down below. That would be a huge support for the channel. Let's get back to the video. Showing who is the boss, Vegeta plays with Cell and beats him up over and over again. Without any chance of surpassing him, Cell persuades Vegeta to let him get his perfect form so he can show him full strength. Vegeta's pride blinds him once again and even helps Cell to absorb number 18. Meanwhile, Goku and Gohan get to work and start training in the time chamber, just as Vegeta and Trunks did. This is where Gohan could finally become Super Saiyan. Now, Cell, along with Vegeta, manages to acquire his perfect form, but it's a mistake that would cost the Saiyan Prince very expensive. Now, he would be no rival for the definitive android. Trunks would try the same thing, but fail anyway. Despite this, Cell decides to leave them alive and hold a tournament where he would face the best fighters on the planet one by one. When all fall, Cell would promise to end life on Earth. A small parenthesis here to highlight that on this occasion, the transformation of the bulky Trunks would not be depicted. I'm not really sure why they made this decision, but most likely they decided to cut not very long fights that would represent a new character design. Even so, I'm still wanting to see this version of Trunks in the game. Now, with all this in mind, the Z Warriors prepare for the day of the tournament. Some would train, others would reconsider, and so the days passed. The fatal day arrived. Everyone is prepared to give their lives in the fight against Cell. By the way, special mention here to Mr. Satan, who I'm glad that he was included as an active character in the game and could give him better reins so that the climax would happen as it should be. And obviously the comic moments were not lacking. The first warrior to face Cell would be Goku, showing how he took the transformation of the Super Saiyan to the maximum power. Even so, he could not completely keep up with Cell. After a good first round, Goku mentions what no one wants to hear. Son Goku gives up. This is in order to leave the fight to Gohan, trusting in his hidden power. Gohan improved in an amazing way with respect to his previous power level, and this is reflected in his moveset in gameplay as well. But when he tells him that he doesn't want to fight anymore and that it would only unleash the fury of his hidden power, he would end up provoking Cell to make his friends suffer, and those probably made him show his full power. When number 16 failed in his attempt to self-destruct along with Cell, the rest of his head is thrown out by Mr. Satan so that he can share his last words with Gohan. With everything that was going through the little Saiyan's mind at that moment, an ultimatum from Cell tearing away what was left of 16, he lets out a scream to the sky and reaches the definitive form of a Super Saiyan seen up to that moment. The face 2. Gohan easily finishes all the Cell Juniors who were torturing the Sea Warriors, with strikes faster than any other seen in history. Against all odds, he also submits Cell with terrifying ease. After such a beating, Cell ends up vomiting number 18, and thus loses his perfect form. This seemed the end of the villain, but full of hate, he decides to self-destruct along with the Earth and the Z Warriors. Gohan cannot do anything, since if he tries to touch him, he would explode faster. So Goku says goodbye to his friends, takes Cell with him with the teleportation to King Kai's planet where he could not hurt anyone else, and that is how Goku dies for the second time. Gohan's anger and regret is notable, but it would soon fade away, along with the life of one of his allies. Trunks is reached by a deadly attack from Cell. He was able to revive due to the gland in his body that allows him to regenerate. Thanks to the Saiyan cells in his body, he can become much stronger after having been on the brink of death, and in addition, he learned the teleportation from Goku. Yes, I know, it was a bit exaggerated. Vegeta explodes in rage after watching his son die, and with consecutive attacks, he goes all over Cell. But oh surprise, Vegeta is knocked out again. After saving him from certain death, Gohan sacrifices his left arm, leaving at a clear disadvantage against the improved Cell. In one last destructive attack, Cell decides to annihilate everyone. Gohan answers Cell's attack with a Kamehameha with the usable arm that he still has. Together with Goku in the other world, Gohan explodes and destroys Cell without return. With the father and son Kamehameha, once again, the Earth would be at peace, and thanks to Son Gohan. It's been 7 years since Cell's defeat and the Earth lives in peaceful times. Gohan, now 16 years old, goes to Seidan City's high school, where he fights crime by becoming Super Saiyan so as not to be recognized. When we are presented with the daily life of the teenager Gohan, we see great facets of exploration in the game, taking into account that he is trying to lead a normal life, goes to school, plays baseball games, and does errands all over the city. In the middle of this thing of being the superhero Great Saiyaman, after many years, he would assigned to enter the Tenkaichi Budokai tournament in which a large number of older quantities and also new fighters would participate. It's here where Goku, after training all those years in the afterlife, returns to Earth to participate. Here he meets his second son, Goten, for the first time. By the way, this one could also be used in free roam mode. In fact, he has a good section of participation during the gameplay period of this last saga, helping Gohan with the training for the tournament and helping Videl learn how to fly. In the middle of the preliminaries of the tournament, two mysterious individuals appear who would also participate. Piccolo would be lucky enough to face one of them, but he would discover that it was the Supreme Kai, so he avoided fighting him. Even so, the fights continued. Videl had to face Popovich, the merciless who in the series mopped the floor with her just before throwing her out of the ring. Gohan could not contain his anger and was determined to crush Popovich in the next fight, if it weren't for the fact that he and his partner took advantage of Gohan's energy to steal it and run away. Now the Supreme Kai reveals that they entered the tournament because they knew that Babbidi's minions would arrive in search of a great source of energy, so they could wait for the opportunity and chase the minions to discover the whereabouts of Babidi, who is the son of the evil wizard Bibidi, creator of one of the greatest sources of power and evil in the universe, the monster Majin Buu. The Saiyans of the Earth would be the best defense against this threat, and the great Kaio knew it. It's a bit complicated to summarize so many things in such a short time, so I'll try to be brief with all the events of the saga at the same time that we highlight the sections of gameplay and mechanics. Once in Babidi's base, Piccolo and Krillin are turned into stone by Dabura, king of the demons. Goku, Vegeta and Gohan infiltrate to finish off Babidi's minions one by one, until Gohan faces Dabura. Their power levels are quite equal and the fight fails to end properly. Vegeta, blinded by the desire to become the proud warrior prince of before, surpasses before Babidi's magic and becomes a threat to everyone. He just wants to have the fight of of his life against Goku. This is how Goku, without any other option, faces the new and ruthless Vegeta, in a battle between two Super Saiyan 2 that shakes the entire world. Meanwhile, what everyone feared becomes a reality. Majin Buu is resurrected. With an appearance that seems just harmless, he finishes everyone in his path, Gohan, the Supreme Kai, and even Dabura, just because he didn't like him. When the fight between Goku and Vegeta reached its middle point, they realized the energy of Majin Buu. Seeing that Goku would not be totally focused on the fight, Vegeta decides to leave him unconscious by tricking him. In this way, he decides to face Buu alone. Clearly, it was not enough to beat him. In a desperate situation and saying goodbye to his son, he makes the sacrifice that we all have seen so many times, releasing all his energy to pulverize Majin Buu. In a huge explosion on the horizon, Vegeta dies. Majin Buu, even after all this, was still alive and intact. At the same time, Goku awakens and is informed of what has happened at Kami's palace. It's here that they decide to teach Goten and Trunks the fusion technique, since they have the same size and similar power levels. This is the last hope left for humanity while Majin Buu is still on the loose. Meanwhile, since the Dragon Balls revived those who were killed by Majin Buu, Kibito comes back to life, finds the Supreme Kai and heals him of his wounds. They take Gohan, who was still alive, and transport him to the Supreme Planet. Here they also heal him of his wounds and decide to train him with the Z Sword to unlock his full potential. It's a bit disproportionate how the game decides to carry the pace of the story at this point. There are situations where you spend up to 13 minutes in a row of just cinematics before getting started in the fights or in the open world, and I know it's due to the brutal amount of material that they have to condensate and not lose coherence. Also, taking into account that not all the participating characters are playable, it's likely that the gameplay would take that direction. However, it seemed important to me to highlight this small inconvenience with the pacing. In any case, on Earth, Babidi and Majin Buu go in search of Piccolo, Goten, and Trunks. To prevent this, Goku decides to entertain Majin Buu while Trunks safeguards the Dragon Radar, since without it, its use would be practically impossible. It's here where Goku transforms into the imposing Super Saiyan 3, giving Buu a more than a close fight. They let us use it in all its splendor, and its great level of power is reflected in the gameplay. Even so, its use is limited, and Majin Buu decides to finish off Babidi since it's of no use to him and doesn't let him do what he wants. Now, Goku, who had to return to the other world after the time period that was given to him, he feels Gohan's energy and manages to locate him by feeling his ki and using the teleportation. He continues his training after having taken the Z Sword from its podium, promising to become incredibly strong. But almost immediately he breaks it due to the recklessness of the Supreme Kai. From the Z Sword comes the soul of the Supreme Kai from 15 generations ago, which unlocks Gohan's full potential. Back on Earth, Majin Buu has his iconic story of friendship with Mr. Satan, and after a series of unfortunate events, Buu takes out all his evil in another half, which absorbs his counterpart, creating the new Super Buu. The children finally learn the fusion technique and are now ready to face Majin Buu, for the second time in fact, because the first time they got completely beat up. But now, more trained and prepared, they challenge him in the time chamber, with the hope of being able to lock him up there forever. However, not even the Super Saiyan form of the fusion called Gotenks has what it takes to defeat Super Buu's form. When the entrance to the time chamber is destroyed, it seems that they will stay inside the room forever. But a scream of anger from the monster ends up opening an interdimensional portal that takes him right in front of Kami's palace, when Buu not only takes the advantage to escape but also annihilates everyone who are still alive in Kami's palace, using the same technique as Buu. Gotenks transforms into Super Saiyan 3 and manages to get the necessary power to open a similar portal. When they exit, they work fully to finish off the monster. It seems that they are about to succeed, but just at that moment the time limit of the fusion runs out, now being at the mercy of the villain. But that's about to change. Gohan returns to Earth just in time with his new and improved hidden power. The definitive Gohan was born. He has a power that easily subdues Super Buu. After this, Buu takes the advantage to absorb Goten, Trunks, and Piccolo. This has a tremendous power now. Not even Gohan is a rival for him. With a last setback plan, Goku returns to Earth by force to try to fuse with Gohan with the Potala earrings, but in a moment of bad and even ridiculous luck on Gohan's part, he is absorbed by Majin Buu, also when Gotenks fusion vanishes within his organism. Now, Super Buu, with Gohan absorbed, is the most powerful character in history. That would change quickly because Vegeta, who was in the afterlife, managed to return to Earth as well. After a couple of words exchanged between the Saiyan rivals, we already know how this ended, in the fusion called Vegito, which had a power much greater than Buu's. When transforming into Super Saiyan, he would end up condemning the devil. Here, we can clearly see that CyberConnect are still the kings in cinematics in anime games. They were able to adapt their style to the Dragon Ball universe perfectly. Every shot and visual effect is used in the best way possible, and this is one of the best demonstrations we could see. However, with a lot of convenient narrative events, Vegito ends up letting himself be absorbed by Buu in order to rescue those he had previously absorbed. In a series of rare events within Buu's body, the true final villain of this story appears, Kid Buu. This annihilates the entire planet Earth and the human race in a merciless attack. In the last moments, Goku manages to save Mr. Satan and Dende, and teleport him to the Supreme Planet just before the imminent explosion. It's here where the final fight would take place, Super Saiyan 3 Goku against Kid Buu. A pretty even battle, full of good strategies on Goku's part, but which end up being overshot by the infinite regeneration ability that Kid Buu has. Vegeta tries to entertain him a little while Goku recovers his energy, but this monster is simply too much for the Saiyan Prince. I would like to highlight how in this part the game gives its place and recognition to the remembered scene of Vegeta's number 1, letting us see all the evolution that the character has had. In the end, they came out with the last possible solution, the Spirit Bomb. Both Vegeta, Majin Buu and Mr. Satan give their everything to retain Kid Buu, while Goku tries to gather enough energy to create the most powerful Spirit Bomb ever seen. At first, the humans don't want to cooperate, but with the help of Mr. Satan, they end up providing their energy, and the last wish of the Dragon Balls ends up restoring all of Goku's energy, just what was needed to carbonize Kid Buu. With a speech that is remembered by everyone, this story culminates with the end of Majin Buu, finally with the Z Warriors coming out victorious. And finally, I loved how this game did not make the same mistakes as other games that tried to represent the story in similar ways. They didn't rush the process, they gave each character their time and space to develop, and I feel that this is one of the greatest strengths in the narrative section of this game. Everything in terms of level design, learning curve and plot development has been spectacular in my opinion, obviously taking into account the standards of games that are adapting a story. But what about the most important gameplay section, the combat? Was it enough to keep up? Well, to answer that we'll have to start from a fact. The combat scheme had to be modified to make it according to the genre. This is why we couldn't wait for the game to be open world, and as soon as we get into a combat, we would find a Budokai Tenkaichi or a Raging Blast playing style. If we wanted to turn it into something in accordance with the RPG genre, that could only lead us to this. We should divide the features, since this game learned from many mechanics implemented in the past: a fast and fluid movement model, a super attack customization scheme taken from Dragon Ball Xenoverse, a palette of objects that affects your standard stats, also taken from Xenoverse, a level design against an opponent that acts more like a boss fight than a character on equal terms, taken from Battle of Z, and a very simple combo chaining system taken from a great franchise like Naruto Storm, developed by CC2 as well. All these elements were combined in a very captious way. In the end, the result was a much more entertaining product than I would ever expected. In previous games, fighting in the Dragon Ball story had to adapt to the gameplay. It was a hand-to-hand fight, but in Kakarot, it's not a fight. it's a show. All the rivals have unique abilities, elements that make you approach them in different ways. While before you had to learn devastating combos to subdue your rival, here you had to know the skills of the opponents, learning their hit patterns, and keeping your distance on certain occasions. The game gives the freedom to chain attacks, but it's still a cycle that must be repeated. And don't get me wrong, it's incredibly fun, at least for me. However, as the levels go by, you realize that the gameplay ends up depending a lot on the dodge action. The little dash that the character do to evade attacks is a very cool section visually, very faithful to the original visuals as well, and also it works excellently to show off the mobility of the characters. This ends up being a double-edged sword, because in the end it all comes down to dodging, counterattack, and waiting for the opponent to go back on the offensive. However, it's not an aspect that would really worry me. Character combos can be extended with dashes, mixes of other commands or special attacks. Mixes with other buttons can give different results depending on what you need at the moment. For example, with X you can end with a quick running attack. With square, you can finish it with an energy blast, or with triangle, you can make a shock wave to send the rival far away. This gives quite a variety of combinations, which it's not like you can calculate the property of the hits. That is, and I repeat, it's not like a fighting game. Although when your rival has an armor break, you can attack consecutively as you please. In a neutral situation for both, there will always be the possibility that your rival can cut off any combo with a special move, and that often kills the charm. The CPU isn't a strong opponent, really, but it's not fair that the player is punished for stringing together a series of hits correctly, enabling enemies to escape whenever they want. If they wanted to do that, they could have saved it for opponents in crucial battles in the story, which can only be counted on the fingers of one hand, because otherwise it's a bit boring. It's quite sad. With all this said, I can't just ignore the problems with the mechanics. I love how the game makes you face enemies in this world that feels so alive. I can now say with certainty that I love Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. If I had to highlight something that I can really leave you as my audience in regards to Dragon Ball games and anime games in general, it's that there will always be the repetitiveness factor. It's extremely complicated to make a video game. No matter how innovative and ambitious might sound, it's almost impossible not to feel a repetitive experience. What is really important when reviewing these games is how the developers manage to do their work so that the repetitiveness is not so notorious for the players, or at least that doesn't harm the entire experience. In this case, with Kakarot, I feel that this feeling is notable, of course, yes, but at the same time addictive. You are always going in search of more, to find objects, to prepare the strangest dishes, to learn new skills in the training areas, to explore this vast world. That is a very important achievement. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot has flaws in its combat structure, it's true, but I would not consider it bad either. It delivers, from my point of view, as the game that offers the definitive experience of the Dragon Ball story. Guys, remember that this is not over yet. We have a couple more videos pending doing the review of the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot DLCs. We still have a good section of content about this game to highlight. By leaving your like, you contribute to those videos and the content creation of this channel. And also, Sparking Zero is about to be released. I'll continue to give my best, guys. Thank you very much for watching. That was all for today, and I'll be watching you in the next video. Take care and see ya.